Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to continue continue our journey through the Nightmareland Chronicles. And Hal is upset,
Yeah.
but, but I'm here with a couple of friends and author
Ooh.
Daniel Barnett. Nico, you want to kick us off with introductions?
Sure. So I'm super happy to be back for the second one here. But my name's Nico. My channel is Nico's Book Reviews, and I'm the fantasy guy that is in love with this series anyway, even though I don't read horror typically. So it's been a wild ride and just a lot of fun.
Stacy, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Stacy. I have a YouTube channel called Stacy's All Booked. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm once again excited to be here. I love this series, and I'm so excited how close we're getting to finally getting to Lily. So I'll get to start a new book in the Nightmareland Chronicles. So, and I agree with Hal, definitely.
Yeah, no, I have my fan on him here usually for a reason. So he can't hear stuff that's going on in other parts of the house because he does that when he hears things that are going on in other parts of the house. But with my fan on, then he couldn't hear me and I couldn't hear you. So here we are.
Yeah. You want to introduce yourself, Daniel? Let us know if you're the mastermind behind the series.
So my name is Daniel, the author of 4 books prior to the Nightmareland Chronicles and, of course, the Nightmareland Chronicles, an ongoing adventure horror epic following one man's journey to reach his estranged daughter in a world claimed by eternal night. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun chatting about these with you all. So thanks for having me again.
Yeah, it's been a blast. So before we continue, let's catch up on a couple of comments. So Brandy's in the room. Excited
Hi,
to
Brandy.
talk flashlighters. And your friend Andrew is here. And he is distraught because you still haven't answered if you will have his babies.
I don't know if I'm genetically capable of having a baby. Or biologically capable, or
Oh, that's definitely Andrew.
all the above, yeah. And Amanda's will be right here. She's a few minutes late. And some guy named Jay is around.
what's up, Jay?
How's it going, Jay?
We had a good chat on his channel last night.
Yeah, good stuff. I missed that one, but yeah, good stuff. Paper Cuts is always a good watch. So I think we lost Stacy, but she'll be right back. So Nikki, you want to kick us off with your thoughts? And let me just put up a spoiler banner. I think we could probably get into spoilers. I mean, we're getting deep into the series, so
That's probably fair. That's when I posted about that. I'm like join if you've read it. I didn't say that there'd be non-spoiler, but I really enjoyed this one. I didn't realize it was going to be another one of the kind of short ones, but this book was like the edge of your seat from beginning to end, and I was not expecting the huge escalation in the nightmares. And Daniel, I feel like stuff you said last time makes so much more sense now because you were specifically talking about how in Sleepwalking it's kind of easing the reader into the idea of the like living nightmares, and then just immediately in Flashlighters it's just thrown at you, which was crazy. But I, the thing is too is, and I'm wondering if it was intentional or not, but I felt like almost everything went a completely different way than I thought it was going to go. All of the events of this book, like everything, there's been lots of unexpected stuff, but that was my big takeaway. It's just every time I'm like, oh, this is gonna happen for sure. It didn't, and something completely different happened. And so it was just, yeah, this one, I've enjoyed them all, but this one was just like a wild ride from start to finish for me.
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, and the nightmares did get bigger, for sure. Amanda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sorry that I'm late. My name's Amanda, and my channel is called The Reading and Writing Life. And I just started reading horror and fantasy and sci-fi and all that kind of stuff this year. And so I am glad that I stumbled upon Steve's channel and then found out about the Nightmareland Chronicles. So.
Nice. Thanks for coming fashionably late, but it's always good to have you. You want to tell us your thoughts on Flashlighters?
Okay, so we're doing. I see you have spoilers on the screen, so it doesn't matter what I say.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, well, first of all, my husband, I know we've compared this to The Stand before. My husband just finished The Stand last night, but what we had been talking about was the fact that Stephen King does this, like, and no one ever saw Polly again or whatever, like whoever it is. And so last night when I was reading, I got to that one part where they were all leaving and Sam didn't go say anything to his dad. And then it was like, and he never got the chance. And I was like, look right there. So anyway, it was funny. I really liked it. I guess I liked the fact that it was all, we got some of everybody. It wasn't just Maria. It wasn't just whatever. It was like, I liked that about it, that it was all the characters and we kind of got their points of views at different times.
Because our friend Joshua Marcella is here. Hey, Josh. Hope everything's going well.
Hey, Josh.
And Brandy says, the big finger with the huge fingernail.
One of many great visuals in this one.
Yeah, who is the Steve guy and who does he think he is?
The fact that the fingernail thing passed, or the finger thing passed so quickly, like, and then they were just away from it, was cool to me. But when it first started happening, I was like, what are we about to see? And so I was preparing myself for something else to come out. And then it was just the finger. And I was like, oh, that's even more creepy, that it's just like this one thing and you have no idea what's behind there. Like,
yeah. I liked it because to me, it was like, it was still a nightmare, but we'd already had like a really big experience of them having nightmares like right on them. And then we get that, of course, later at the repair shop. But this was like all of the people passing by are like, oh yeah, watch out for this. And it was like just commonplace, like they're used to it. And just kind of, it's like, even, you know, people can adapt to anything. And that's just even at the point they're at where they're fully aware that there are living nightmares and they're used to it. And they're like pointing it out like it's on a tour, like it's not some form of danger, like beckoning them so it can devour them. I mean, that was another thing which I expected more to happen there. And then after I got through and was thinking about it, I'm like, I thought it worked that it didn't. Just for the simple sake of like, it's like not, I mean, like, it's like, yeah, look at the big thing here. It's totally normal. We've passed it all the time. I'm just like, that's crazy.
Yeah, you think you would think that once everything kind of comes down, that this sort of thing would happen. There would be these kind of communities or groups that would form and organize, and you'd be real careful to be around if you ran into them.
Yeah, I was so intrigued by a lot of things in this community. But number one, the fact that you seem to be able to wake people up. And so I wanted to be like, oh my gosh, like I keep going back to John, like slaughtering that whole auditorium. And I just want to be like, how many of those people like could have been woken up? And then is it something that he's doing that wakes them up? Like, could anybody do it? Or is it now like something supernatural with this guy who I kept suspecting at any moment that he was going to turn evil?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I just kept waiting.
100%.
I was like, he can't be this real. He has to be an actor. This has to be fake. And so far, we do not know anything. But that's what I kept thinking. I was like, it's too good to be true. Like, it has to be. He has to be bad.
And that's what I was saying just as you were joining, was just, it seemed like every time with Flashlighters you thought you knew what was going to happen, it didn't, or it happened differently. And there was even like characters specifically reacting to it, because like immediately you had John, he's like, they're gonna ask for our guns. I'm not gonna, or the gun. I'm like, I'm not gonna give it to them. Like, it's gonna be a shootout, and expecting it. And you're like, oh, 100% that's gonna happen. Like, that makes total sense and completely believable. And they're like, just don't wave it around. And you're like, what? They're really not. And then you have the whole, you know, the religious thing, and everybody's like, this is totally BS. And then Maria goes and confronts him, and he's like, no, it's real. And like that whole creepy tension building scene between the two of these, like, come closer and see. And I'm like, he's gonna kill her, or like he is a nightmare, like something bad is gonna happen. He's like, no, look at my eye. And like, I just like, it was, there was so much tension that kept building and then dissipating. And it was such an odd experience, but in the best possible way. And then, yeah, what you brought up as my biggest question is the idea that these people can be woken up somehow. And more like even they're like the people who are woken up like seem like they didn't want to be because they're having the best dream, you know? And so there's just this brought up so many more questions, and definitely made me just so excited to continue. But yeah, that was a huge development.
Am I frozen or is it just me?
It's
It must
we
just
can- I
be
can
you.
hear
You
you.
don't look frozen.
I
Okay.
say you look good.
Okay. Well, if you're all making fun of me, I can't tell, but yeah. I'm frozen.
Okay, turtleneck. I just expected so many things. It's that same thing. I mean, Daniel, you're so good at building the tension and just making me suspect, like, especially the come closer conversation, like you were saying. I just thought, oh, there's no way this is going to turn out well. And then nothing happened. And the same thing with turtleneck. She could hear like noises back there, and then she still felt like she was being watched. I was just like, oh, something's up with him. And then he was gone and Sam was gone at the same time. And I'm like, something's going on with turtleneck.
So Daniel, was that like a conscious choice to have so many moments where like you had the false tension building up it was like to make the really tense moments more so, or like what was your thought process with just the way this one was written? Dying
Well,
to know.
there's a couple different things going on there, and so some of it I wanted it to come from the characters. I wanted like the impact of the Brown brothers, Ernest and Theodore, to kind of carry through to Maria in terms of how she expects, how suspicious she is immediately of these new people. So it's a kind of an accumulation of things that have happened on their journey thus far, for some of that stuff. The big one, of course, is the flashlighters as a group, Father Ammon, and whether or not you typically when you run into a kind of a cultish figure in a book like this, they're always bad news, and I was tired of that. A cultish group. I was tired of that kind of trope. I mean, at best, like I've enjoyed it before and I'll enjoy it again, but at best I would just be adding like another like sleeve to the catalog. Another example. At worst, it would be kind of flat and one dimensional. But I talked about this. I think it was, I don't know if it was last week or the last time we got together, or maybe even Lullaby. But I was talking to Steve and Brandy, I know for sure, about like organized religion and how I think that like it's not that you have to, but I think like it's sort of our responsibility as authors to like challenge ourselves in some way. So I'm really critical of organized religion, but that doesn't mean, in a lot of ways at least. So I wanted to, and like kind of going after like the crazy religious types is kind of like kicking the low hanging fruit in some ways. So I really want, and I know that there's like a whole breadth more than that to religion. Like there are, and spirituality, there are like many people out there who do the right things with it, or use it for the right things, or take the right things from it. And I wanted to kind of use this as an opportunity to like explore that side of things a little bit, especially under this like umbrella where you expect these people to be innately terrible and awful, and like zealots or whatever, something kooky. And instead you get a group of people that's kind of like self-deprecating and sort of just limping by, and they're like doing their best, and like they found some small measure of happiness with each other, and they're just kind of like doing their best to hold on to that. And then there is this enigmatic figure at the center of it, but like all other things aside, like he's mostly somebody who's just trying to do right by his family, and now like his extended family. So it was, and I guess just the final thing to elaborate there is when I don't know. I mean, like at least with the kind of stories I want to tell, you have an opportunity to like shine a light on like different kinds of humanity, and I think it's you achieve more usually when you're able to find some like something kind or like benevolent with humanity, especially in a story like this when so much is dark already. Literally, figuratively, whatever. But like, I like stories that surprise you, with like moments of kindness and compassion and beauty and stuff, even when everything is terrible. It's really easy to just be like everybody's nasty and rough and ugly and mean and gross and vile and wallow in all of that. I think it's a lot harder to construct characters that are real in a good way, like, or what I mean. I'm not saying that the ugly side of humanity isn't real. I guess too. This is just like a whole thing, but you have a choice who you include in your stories, and I there's oftentimes I feel like this allows for more nuance.
I think so. Well, and it shows the whole spectrum of people. Like, I think if that really did, something like this really did happen, there would be good people trying to do good things. And if that looks like he's centralized this kind of thing and he's trying to provide for these people and protect them like a family, that's going to automatically look cultish from the outside, especially when people call him father and they start doing things, that seem to fit within the bubble of organized religion. Then that's how it's going to be perceived anyway, whether or not he is intending it for it to be that way, or if that's just how it happened organically growing up. Like she said at first, Father called me and I came. Like a lot of people said that. He called me and I came.
A genius line.
Well, and then I realized, later on, he's telling the story and she's like, oh, he literally picked up the phone and called them. Like, it seemed like supernatural. Like he called me and I came. And then it's literally like, no, he called me on the phone and I showed up.
Yeah, he just got out the Rolodex, I was almost mad at how good that was when that happened, because that was just all the thing. And Daniel, you noted too, like that you use different characters and their assumptions and their experience to color how they see things, but it's just everything you think is going to happen with that. And then they're like, Father Almond called me and then he literally on the phone, like that reveal too, it just kind of changes everything about the story. And like I feel like going back, I'd probably even notice more of the small things that were, because there were a lot of things that were deceptive, but it wasn't like you were pulling a fast one. Like everything makes perfect sense once you realize, both before you realize what's going on and once you realize what's going on, because like you're just assuming a lot of things and you're letting us assume those things and using all the things come back later. And so I loved the whole reveal there with like, I called everyone on the phone. I'm glad you said that, because I definitely wanted to talk about that line. I was just, oh man.
And Andrew says, baby nightmare, I still think about that. That was a terrifying thought of what a baby's nightmare would be.
Well, I couldn't picture it at first. Like when you were first describing what happened and like these vertical, I was picturing like rows of teeth this way and like opening like this. And then once we like figured out that it was the nightmare from the baby and that's what people look like even without, yes, maybe the baby was tormented by a cousin or whatever who would just do things. But even in general, I started thinking about that. Like a baby, especially laying in the crib, you just see this giant mouth. Most of the time they have to focus on like one thing. And so that seems like that could very easily be a nightmare, even if they're just being nice and talking. It's still like a really big thing there. I thought that was so cool and also so scary. And one more time when John just did something and I was like, wait a minute, did he just do this? And I like went back and read it again. I was like, John, continually, I like him so much, and then he does something, and I'm like, John. So I am.
Yeah,
I was so upset. I mean, yes, he's just so like black and white to me. Like, well, you're gonna die. You're not making it back, so you might as well sacrifice yourself so I can get out of here. And I was just like, I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, John.
Yeah, that whole scene was just like it was super creepy and everything, and I just love the exploration too, where it's just like because the nightmares are extremely integral to the plot, obviously, but just the exploration of different kinds of nightmares. And we had that with Sleepwalking a little bit, where it was a very specific thing. It maybe didn't make a lot of sense to the other people, but it was, you know, the mother's specific nightmare that she'd had, and so it's things that are, you know, whatever it happens to be, and how people can react differently, like Marco's awkward reaction to some of the nightmares from earlier too, and whatnot like that. And it's just like everybody can see them very, very differently. And I wonder if that's gonna be relevant. And I also like I imagine at some point John's gonna have to face his nightmare, and I look forward to that whenever it may come. I don't know if that's in anything that's already out, but that I'm looking forward to seeing.
And Harfoot is here. He just wanted to say hello and happy Saturday. Hope you're having a good one.
Hey there.
And Stacy says, sorry, y'all, my internet is acting up and I keep losing my connection.
No worries.
Yeah, no problem there. Brendan, I hope anyone can do it in case he has to wake up his daughter when he gets to her.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, if she's asleep and he needs to wake her up, like, I hope anybody can do it. But I hope that means somebody's taking care of her in the meantime, like feeding her and all that stuff. Like,
but I feel like because the line in it was repeated, like something like "I'm so tired, I need to rest now" or something in the voicemail. I feel like that is going to be highly relevant later on, especially since it was brought up again. I went back and I was thinking about the first book after Daniel said that he had to change something that would have been too much of a spoiler or like pointed us too close to the right direction. So I'm like, now I'm overthinking everything for book one. So it could be overthinking. But
Not that one, but not far off the mark.
Nice.
But
nice, Andrew.
Andrew is evil giggling. Stacey says, I'm so glad I got kicked out now because I would not be able to keep a straight face. You guys are going to love the next book. Andrew says, the flashlighters felt very Falling Skies to me if anyone watched that one.
I don't know what that
I
is.
think I've seen
Andrew.
that. There was a TV show on TNT back years ago.
kind of like X-Files, but darker, I think.
Oh,
Or
okay.
is it Dark Skies? Was that?
Oh, I'm thinking Dark Skies, yeah.
Yeah.
And Brandy says Marcos called him a hug in human form, so I thought he was going to be a nice guy because Marcos is up to this point is good at reading people.
Yeah, that's the only thing that made me feel good about him, that threw in some doubt, because I thought, well, he's going to be evil. And then when Marcos was okay with him, I thought, okay, maybe he's not. And then just the whole thing that happened in the tent when Marcos got completely freaked out, and I just felt so bad for him. Like, he cannot stop thinking about the people that he felt responsible for. And he feels like he just like left them all there to die. And he's just a little kid. Like, that's such a big burden for him to be carrying around. And I don't know like what was going on in his head, even though we were getting that from his point of view, but he couldn't take the whole, I don't know, like waking other people up and the fact that he left everybody there and was.
A couple of people in the comments noted that too, kind of just talking about how it was especially powerful because it was from his POV, and he was already dealing with feeling like he abandoned these people, and now he feels like maybe there was something he could have done despite everybody telling him he couldn't. And then it's just, yeah, especially like if he finds out what John did, I feel like that will make things much, much worse. But I do love the point about him being a good read on people, because that is really true thinking about it. But of course, the adults are going to be like, he's just a kid. He doesn't know any better. But, from knowing his POV, he does generally tend to be right, including being very fearful of John, and thinking John seems dangerous, even though John is not specifically like done anything. He does seem to be a very good read of people.
Mm. And I do like switching to Marcos's POV in the beginning when they run into the flashlight as the first time. Those you can almost hear kind of get his perspective on that whole course of events. That was really neat, seeing the different point of view for that.
But on the road with the
Yeah.
nothings.
Yeah, that was cool that we saw what was happening, like from the adult side, and then it switches to Marcos, and it's like he's actually having a dream while he's sleeping, and it was like him with his mom, but he knew something was off because it wasn't like how it normally was, and all kind of stuff until he realized, like, oh, I'm not going to that car. And then there was the whole guilt thing again, where she's like, this is where you left me, here on the side of the road. And so I feel like he's just like smothered in grief and in guilt about everything that's going on right now. And so I did like that Father Ammon could speak sign language, and so he was talking to him, and that even after she was like, hey, stay away from him, he was like, okay, I will, but I do consider y'all as part of my family, so if he comes to talk to me, I'm not turning him away. Like, I really liked that part too.
And see, even that, like, normally you're watching any movie, TV show, or a book, and like there's the deaf character, and then there's a character who seems to be nice and surprisingly knows ASL or whatnot and can communicate. You're like, oh, that's so sweet. But even there, I'm like, oh man, he can talk to Marcos, and they can't hear what he's saying. This is gonna be bad. It's like I still felt like it was gonna be bad, and I was just like, I don't know. I think that was just the narrative that's the whole thing with it. I thought just worked so well because, I was completely stuck in my own narrative and my own assumptions, just because of that's the way it usually is, and so it made it even better when it wasn't.
You're holding your breath, waiting for that shoe to drop, but that doesn't drop.
Or it drops very quickly. Like they're talking to the guy, Lee, sitting outside the garage. There just seems to be having like talking him down and things are going. And then it was like, he put the gun under his chin. I went, wait, what? Like I had to go back and read that again too. I'm like, did he just shoot himself? Like what is happening right now? So I feel like there are these build-up moments, and then it's like, no, he's actually a good guy. And then there are these moments where everything seems to be fine, and then you're like, what? He just shot himself. Like I don't know what's going on.
And see, and watching Daniel laugh at us, I'm just like, he's gonna play with us so much worse than that coming forward. I know everybody they can't help but laugh in the comments because we don't know what's gonna happen. Oh man, it just makes me want to read it so much more.
And Stacy says he believes he left everyone behind in the school to die. Derry's here. Hey, Derry. Thanks for coming by. Brandy says, I love that part. That part was told from Marcos's perspective, too, was brilliant. And Stacy has a question for you. Daniel, how much fun did you have coming up with these nightmares? That's a good question.
Oh, yeah, a bunch of fun. Some of them, cooked for a little while longer than others, like the mouth cooked for a bit. And the nothings on the road at the beginning. I think the finger was something that that happened because I was trying to naturally break the flow of that story that was being told at that moment a little bit, and kind of keep keep us grounded in the physical movement that's happening in this. And I don't remember exactly, but there are sometimes I think it was just one of those things that it just came the day that I wrote it, and I was like, oh, that's that's creepy. I like that, and I chased that idea for that day or whatever, and then picked up the stories thread the next day probably. And yeah, so that's one of the real big like I had a lot of fun with the nightmares in this series. And you know, so last 2 weeks ago, we talked about I talked about, you know, taking the time to try to kind of come up with an idea that could carry a series for 12 books that wouldn't get stale, so there'd still be fun stuff to explore in like books 8 and 9 and 10 and whatever before the climax kind of takes over for the series. And this one, you know, this is where this is the kind of the idea that I came to, because there is just a lot of potential there to explore between, you know, setting and stuff. And you have some nightmares that are really like inexplicable and ridiculous, and other ones that are a little more relatable. And there's room there for anything really. And I would say too that I had a thought. What was it? But in any case, yeah, just a lot of fun to play with this stuff. And you know, sometimes you account for why things are the way they are, and other times, like with the finger, it is, and you like leave the reader kind of guessing what could have possibly, you know, been that person's backstory to have made something like this. But
Definitely, I think I agree. It gives lots of interesting stuff to explore. It certainly has been interesting so far, and it sounds like we've only barely scratched the surface. So,
yeah,
So you talk about it, you know, escalating and going, you know, keeping the story going. So if we're getting into large fingers and huge, you know, these kind of nightmares in book, what was it, book 3 or 4? Then
yeah.
I wonder where are we going from here? It's gonna get even crazier.
Well, you guys read the author's note, or so there's a
about the road trip,
little tease kind of there. Just the idea of you know, they've been really kind of going through like the roads less traveled, like the small towns, fringe places in the country, and there's like still the question of like, what do cities look like? So that's fun.
I did love that. Yeah, even in the author's note, you leave an ominous little thing for us, like if small towns are this bad, what are cities? I'm like, really? Like, this is the author's note. This is supposed to be boring, and you're still like, that was a really fun for me, because I usually do read like the author's notes, or I'll read like introductions and things like that. And I know some people don't, but I typically always do. So I always love it when an author throws something in there for you like that, and so that was fun for me.
Well, yeah, got to give people something.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Gregory.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that John can just say, listen, there was a baby, and the baby had a nightmare, and the nightmare ate Sam. Like, it doesn't have to be a whole, I sacrificed Sam so that I could get away. Like, John doesn't have to say anything, is all I'm saying. Like, but I do hate it that the last conversation that Gregory and Sam had was an argument. Like, I know they argue all the time, but I'm like, I just hate for it to end like that. And I liked Gregory, at least I thought I did. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about him going forward, but my opinion of John changes constantly. So who knows?
John is a character I enjoy reading about. I don't think I would care to meet him pre-Nightfall or post-Nightfall. Either way, I don't think John is somebody I'd like to meet in my real life. Either wow. But yeah, even with like the final conversations and like the go see your father, and like, no, I don't want to, and like all those things that normally would be like, oh, you know, this is kind of cliche. Like, it worked because everything else was unexpected. So you're like, you know, he could just be lying to us, but like, you even like, no. And I like that we've gotten a few more of those kind of like little, almost like, it's not technically a fourth wall break because you're narrating with the little like, but he wasn't going to see him again or something like that. Like, we're getting a little bit more of that inserted the last couple books, and I think it's done with restraint and at really good times, because you're like, I'm not even going to hide the fact that, yep, this is what's going to happen, and then yet you still blow our minds with the full extent of it.
Well, I mean that's a whole comment. I mean, thank you, and I'm glad that stuff has worked for you. I think like last time I talked a little bit about how mostly stuff is pretty limited point of view, but then every now and then, like at the end of a scene or something, I'll kind of just like slightly slip out and kind of take the authorial voice, where you kind of like you get just a little dash of omniscience, and I think so. This is something that like. Amanda was totally right. That is a Stephen King tech device, that kind of just, and they're never going to see him again kind of moment. And that's exactly where I got it, that kind of thing from. But in rereading Stephen King's work and trying to really kind of decipher what makes it work so well, I came upon this interesting, and this is like maybe room for like a way longer conversation. But in brief, I realized that, and this is not even all of his books, but it's most of his books. I don't know if you can see that bookshelf there. But in all of those books there, except for maybe a couple of the short stories, which, like there's the Strawberry Spring and the Jaunt, the man does not write twists, period. Ever. Like, ever. I think the only twist in any of his full-length books came in recent years in The Outsider when he killed off the guy you think is going to be the main character really early in the book. That qualifies, I think, as a twist. But he doesn't write twists. What he does is he so intimately... He conveys this feeling to the reader as you go along that he so intimately knows the story he's trying to tell and what's important in the story he's trying to tell. And he's not afraid to just say, like, look at this part is really important. And I think that's something to be said about why his books are so special and resonate for so long is he owns it. And so then there's like a little quiet moments, he'll even tell you what's about to happen to kind of keep you on the line, but also to indicate like, hey, this thing that just happened right now, it's important. Like it's a confidence issue. I think readers feel that confidence when the author knows what they're trying to say. So even if a moment is quieter, if the author's there saying like, no, really though, pay attention because this is going to matter in some fashion, you can keep a reader like paying attention to these details even in the downbeat moments. And I think that's something, I mean, I have like a lot to say on this subject, but I think that's something that's like really crucial to King's success is his the way in the trajectory of his career, he has turned away from trying to surprise the reader and is instead just focused on making the reader see why this story is special. Like, just period. Like, full stop. He's just like, you pick up one of his books and you're like, he's telling me this for a reason. And then he backs it up with, whatnot. But that's a long conversation, and I even talked a little bit about this with the Last House on Needless Street. Has anybody read The Last House on Needless Street?
Not yet.
It's a phenomenal book. Had me enraptured from the word, like, well, I would say like it's around 30% that it really starts ratcheting up. That book is built around its bombshells, and there are many bombshells, and they are significant bombshells, and they are done, and like they're all perfect. But where my tastes have led me to, like, it's a book that's like, it's a 5-star book. It's probably like my number 4 or 5 or something for the year. You know what I mean? But it's not my favorite. because the twists are foundational to the story. It is wrapped around its revelations. Like it swerves. And my favorite kind of stories I've come to discover know exactly what they are, and they're not afraid to tell you what they are from the beginning, and you're there with it. Not to say that I don't have some favorites that kind of like fall outside that mold, but my very favorite ones, like the ones that like make me warm inside when I think about them, the ones that make me want to revisit them, it's not because of a twist. It's because it's engrossing. You love the characters, you love the journey. Those are the things that an idea is thoroughly explored. In any case, that's a tangent, but you both kind of mentioned that stuff, and thought I'd talk a little bit about what that's because I used to be like, a lot of my older books have like some pretty twists, and I'm like, as an author, trying to play stuff close to the chest, and I'm like really proud of those books, and some of them I hold like in really high esteem still, on a personal level. But I have kind of, to some extent, distanced myself a little bit as an author from writing books and as a means to like surprise a reader. I just think that's less important than being memorable. Telling a memorable story. In any case, that's
and it has more read, like going back to a story if everything's not based around the twist, because once you know the big twist and the big reveal, then there's no reason to go back to that book. But if it is the characters and the adventures and the slow progression of whatever, then that can be visited anytime, revisited anytime.
Yeah. Like you think about Lord of the Rings, it's not like the ring, like there's no twists in Lord of the Rings, and that's like a timeless classic. Every time I'm sick, I have to watch the 10-hour trilogy again, and it's not like, I can't wait for the moment that Frodo finds out the ring isn't real and that he is the ring himself embodied. It's like, no, it's a ring. Like what they told you at the beginning is true. The stakes are established, and danger along the way and stuff. But anyway,
now I'm just thinking, look at me, I'm the ring now.
Yeah,
I am the ring.
Okay, but talking about Stacy's comment that you have up here, first of all, I was like, those cannot be sleepwalkers. Like, they've got the sleepwalkers pulling RV. But I loved the conversation. I think it must have been Gregory talking to Maria, where he was like, I don't know how I feel about it either, but this is what we're doing. We're not going to stand here on the road and keep discussing it. You can feel however you want to feel about what we're doing, but this is what we're doing. Like, they've all been checked out by a doctor. They're all good to go, and this is what we're doing. And so I kind of just went with Gregory. I was like, I don't know how I feel about it. It does feel like they're, I don't know, kind of forcing these people to do something that they don't have a choice in, whether or not they're going to do it. But at the same time, maybe it's good for them to be actively moving, because otherwise they're going to get like bed sores and their muscles aren't going to work. Like, you can't just leave them. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. But if you, like Gregory, already knew that there's a possibility that some of them can wake up, or that there is something beyond the sleeping, I guess. So you don't want to just write them all off. We don't want to be like the town before that just killed everybody who was a sleepwalker. And so I don't know what the answer is either, but I do like that Gregory just straight up said, like, we don't have a good feelings about this, but this is what we're doing. And I just thought that was a really good, like, let's just get it out in the open and not pretend like what we're doing is great. But
And it was another one of those things that can be taken in two very different ways, because that might play into like, oh, they're using the sleepwalkers because they're this evil cult. But the other side is like, no, it's practical. And especially like they talk about it a bit, but it's shown at the moment, and then later on too, that they do take care of these people. They feed them, they change their diapers, even though they're humans. They have a doctor that checks them out. I mean, they're probably keeping them in better health than most any sleepwalkers anywhere else, and going that route. And so it's like it is one of those iffy areas, and that's why I like the book doesn't really answer like whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. It doesn't really try to. It's just like it just is. So like kind of the way you put it, where it's just like it is what it is. And like I agree. I reacted the same way. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, should I find this wrong? Should I understand this? And there's a lot of those things where and I mean, it goes to your comments, Daniel, about just like, this is the story I'm telling, and this is why it's important. It's so much of it is just like, I'm telling you the story, and it's some things are up to you how you interpret it. There's definitely other things there, but there's endless shades of gray, I feel like, and how each individual person will feel about a lot of things, and you're usually given a good amount of the story, and then kind of have to decide how you feel about it.
Yeah. I don't know if you want me to weigh in or not, but
Well, of course, we always want you to weigh in.
I don't, I don't have like an easy answer. I don't have an answer for that either. I don't know if it's right or wrong what they did. I think their logic is fairly reasonable, and I remember last time, we talked about kind of, the juxtaposition between Marcos trying to take care of everybody in the auditorium, and then the town that just like they just murdered everybody instead. And now you have the flashlighters who are trying to take care of everybody, but with more resources, and then still at like quite risk to themselves, because there's this underlying current, of course, of if any of these pass out in their sleep, who knows what kind of nightmare they're going to give birth to. Or if they perish in their sleep. So there's a practical level to trying to keep them healthy as well too. But on the same token, they really are trying to. They're just trying. I mean, like, I guess that's what it comes down to, is they're just trying. They're trying to do the right thing. And if I have anything to say as an author here with these stories and stuff, I think ultimately, like, that's where I kind of draw the line. The result is whatever the result is, but usually the act of trying to do the right thing says something. But it's messy. It's complicated, and being around them is unpleasant too. So like, you're trying to care for this thing that like physically makes you uncomfortable. Like this person, they're not things, but like
Right.
they're not functionally people anymore. They're of no real service except for this one really narrow niche service that the flashlighters have been able to get from them, which is like, okay, they can do our walking for us, kind of, when we're traveling.
Oh, and that part, the whole like pushing the truck. I know that somebody said something about it in the comments, that the way you wrote it made them feel tired, and that I felt the same way. I was like, oh my gosh, I am so tired. I want them to be able to turn the truck on. I want it to be like, John, start the truck for a little while. I mean, but
Drive.
the whole pushing and pushing, I was just like, and poor Marcos is just out there with him doing his best as well. But I'm like, I loved that at one point she was being able to walk less and less steps, and Marcos was actually walking more and more steps. I just liked the difference in the two of those and what was going on. And still, her relationship, Maria and Marcos together, is still just the best. And her wanting to learn sign language, like, of course she would. Like, and John, okay, surprising John is like, hey, what do you think we should do? Asking Marcos, like, up to this point, he's like ignored him, other than to pull him under the truck with him at the beginning, and then just be like, do this. Now he's all of a sudden like what do you think? And I was like, oh, John is starting to connect to Marcos. And then it's just like, I'll just kill Sam. It's fine. So
There were so many good moments and like strong character development. Pushing a damn truck, like, I mean, that should have been a boring scene, but it wasn't at all. It's just like, yeah, you really felt for them, and you got kind of everyone's perspective, the way they looked at it differently, all of the interactions, and that even though that was a good chunk of a passage, like I thought it worked so well. Yeah, just with those differing interactions between them. I did too. I love because like I knew why, but like there was that part of my brain that's like, why don't they just get another car? Come on. And then I love that somebody else says, why don't we just get another car? And John's like, have you seen these new cars? All the speakers everywhere. And I'm like, he's got a really good point. Like even if you dismantle the radio, what if there's this? I'm like, man, you've thought of it for sure.
I think that was on. I think I actually added that paragraph on revision. I felt like I hadn't done enough to shore up that like it was in my mind kind of to some extent, but I was like I hadn't really done it. Like I was like these characters, they need to address it, otherwise it's going to be a little bit of a gap there.
Well, I feel like it makes sense.
I was thinking,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, why don't they find another vehicle? But saying it, and I did want them to take. Although there wasn't anything wrong with the truck when they left the city, but they had already dismantled, like the cars and the trucks that they were all driving had already been dismantled. And so I know they left and their truck was fine, but still, I mean, I think part of it also is John's stubbornness, like his refusal to just do anything outside of what he wants to do. Like,
He's very determined.
There's that.
Yeah.
I would say there's definitely that. But he knows
I felt like he would have been like that anyway. Yeah, like no, we're not leaving my truck. But then I'm like, well, there's a really good reason not to too. So it helped for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't think about that either. Well, I mean, I thought they could just send Marcos in, and like he clearly can tear things up as we saw in the city. But I didn't think about all the speakers in all the different places.
Yeah.
So that was something too that I was like, oh yeah.
I think that was a really good revision on your part, Daniel, just because it gives that little extra for the person with like the nagging thought of like, why don't they just get another car? I'm like, well, yeah. So I think that does work because like it made sense. And like some of the things I'm like, I know it wouldn't just be that easy to go get a car, but like it stayed in my brain until you addressed it. And then it made perfect sense. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And now we're at the point where like all the batteries would be dead in all the cars anyway. Too. So like now that there's been probably a couple, like a few weeks to a month, getting to that kind of time too. So anyway, I'm glad that worked for you guys. It's always interesting to try to kind of like juggle a couple of these world building aspects. And thank you, Epic. I mean, I would be really thrilled to hear what you think if you get the chance.
Yeah, but would really love this one. Hope he gets to it soon.
He
And
does.
Brandy says it. I am loving how fiercely protective Maria is of Marcos.
Yes.
Oh.
And the beer gut that turned into his baby.
Okay, and I'm withholding judgment from John again, but did we ever get any like clear thing on if this baby was just sleeping because the teddy bear had a speaker in it, or has the baby been killed? I don't want you to tell me that because we don't know that reading.
Well, the nightmare had come out, so I think it's heavily implied the baby was dead.
Well, okay, yeah. So when they're sleeping, the nightmares are not as
they're not
real.
It's the death that releases them.
I see.
And if they're like shot in the head or their throats cut or something like that, like
That's
that
right.
that sort of umbilical cord is severed before it can kind of come to complete gestation or whatever.
Right. That makes
But
sense.
yeah, what happened to Lee's baby, I think, if I recall, is it was put to sleep and then he ran out of formula or something along those lines. He didn't have.
It didn't seem like he was capable of
Yeah.
handling it anyway. Kind of like at the very beginning when this guy fell and that mom was just like mowing the sidewalk. Like she clearly was not able to take care of her children, and so I think maybe Lee just wasn't able to cope with whatever was going on.
That too. Isn't it implied that his wife became a sleepwalker and just wandered out of the house, and then he like went to the repair shop where he thought there was going to be like he could control the situation, and then his kid was put to sleep and he kind of just cracked entirely at that point. Yeah.
And so much happens in such a small book. It's amazing.
There's a lot that happens in this book.
I know.
Stacey says Maria and Marcos bring so many heartwarming moments, but also levity, and I love it. And Marcos teach Maria how to swear in sign language.
Yes.
It was fun, but like 100%. That's exactly what Maria would do. Like I firmly believe that. Like it was such a Maria thing. Like you got to teach me the bad words first.
Yeah. And Betty loved the author's note.
I just also love the way that Maria and her relationship to this unborn baby seems to be developing, or not developing, but how many times we get to see her thoughts about it. So it's not just something that's there and then ignored, but we actually get to see her going, oh, I want, like, she just straight up tells Marcos, like, I want this baby to be gone. I don't want to have a baby. But when she found out there was a doctor in the group, I thought she would immediately go to the doctor and be like, help me get rid of this baby. Like, what do I do to get rid of the baby? And she didn't say anything to the doctor about the baby. And so, well, so far, I mean, technically she's still there in where we are right now. So I don't know, but I was just like, I mean, I don't know how she feels about the baby, but I like that we get to keep coming back. I don't know how she's ultimately going to feel about the baby, but we get to keep coming back to her thoughts about it. And so I really like that.
And I love how that situation has been handled in a very complex fashion, and isn't just done to be like super simple. Like, oh, she feels maternal towards Marcos automatically, and so now she's like, oh, I do want to keep the baby. You know, it doesn't go that simple route. And I'm pretty sure in Sleepwalking, there's even she even like has a thought basically that it's not like I'm just gonna get all maternal now. And though she is like fiercely protective of Marcos, I feel like it's not just from that area. And that's why I like the comment too with like the sheriff and I can't remember the name now, but the kind of simple guy. He commented about like, well, he's mine now, just like that kid is yours. And it's like, it's not even just about like, oh, you're like a mother to him. It's just like, you guys found each other, and in this world sometimes that's all there is, and like, you know, you belong to each other now. And so there's this kind of, there's a more complex reason for it, and we're not just like breaking it down into, you know, black and white situation with it either, which I've liked. And kind of like you commented too, is Maria doesn't really know, I think, and you know, she is still saying that she doesn't want the baby, but it's also in a lot of ways the situation's not entirely in her hands. But I think it's been handled really, really well for a complex situation.
Yeah, Stacy says, what do you think about how John is treating Marcos? At some points, I was okay if John went back to sleep.
I was too. Although they wouldn't have made it past the nothings if John had been asleep, because, I mean, the gas thing is cracked, and I love that he was trying to, like, she was going to keep going. I mean, we were in Marcos's head, so we don't know exactly what was happening, but it looked like she was just going to keep driving, and John was like, nope, and just pulled the emergency brake and got out of the car. And I was like, okay, John, one more time, where John's like, we're doing it my way.
It was a John thing to do for sure.
Right, but sure, I mean, it was smart. Otherwise, they would have made it like 2 seconds down the road, and all their gas would be gone. So, I mean, I don't know. Just
that's where I'm just kind of torn. Like, I mean, John is such a, like, John is just kind of like John, and I don't think he's been necessarily like mean or cruel to Marcos in any way. It's more so it's just like Marcos exists, but he's, you know, at times probably just seems like another obstacle for John to get through, which Maria probably does too. It's like he has his goal, like that's where he's going, and that's all that matters to him. So I think it's just more he's very focused on his objective. That's how I've kind of seen him.
And Brandy
Yeah,
says, "I love that." Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amanda. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say he calls him a stray at one point when Gregory, I think it was Gregory, it might have been Sam, but one of the two of them was like, you're not really married to her. Like, you really don't seem like somebody who would be married." I was like, uh-huh.
And Daniel, I'm so sorry. I think I cut you off and you were about to say something.
No, I was just gonna, yeah, that was Sam in the auto shop, and
Oh, yeah.
you know, a lot of fun with this book was kind of starting John off. He's like, he wakes up from this long hiatus and he's sort of the third wheel on his own journey, and he kind of like where does he fit in this dynamic anymore? He kind of, because it's Maria and Marcos have kind of taken over so much of it all, and that was just fun to write. That was fun to kind of be like, you know, he's been sidelined for so long that he sort of has to like reestablish his own presence, and like, you know, I don't know, like I had a lot of fun writing with these characters, especially that conversation by the fire where Maria tells him how it is. That was a lot of fun for me.
I liked it because that's the one where he said, "Tell him to quit throwing rocks. It's annoying." And she like grabbed a handful of rocks and walked away. Like, okay, go ahead. So
Yeah.
Rennie says, I also love that they were pushing the truck for so long. You always do an amazing job of making us feel it with the characters. I was so tired with them.
yeah, that's what the comment I read that made me say the same thing.
Yeah.
I get the feeling she's coming around to keeping the baby, seeing the other pregnant lady and saying everything is going to be okay. Also, the feeling about drinking, feeling bad about drinking, or the guilt she would feel later about drinking.
I know I want to feel the same way, Brandy, but I feel like that's my own personal bias because I would like for her to have the baby and I would like for her to decide to have the baby. And so I don't know if she's actually feeling that way or if that's what we are projecting on her because that's what we want her to feel.
Or
Well,
she
the
just not
tough
wanting to
thing-
give them too much information, and she's still nervous about what they may do if she tells them she is pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking the tough thing is like, yeah, everything might be okay if she stays there where they have a legitimate doctor. But the thing that was running through my mind too, which it just popped back in because earlier when we mentioned like she never mentioned wanting to abort the baby to the doctor, it's like it is the doctor of although different, like a religious organization that very well may frown on that quite a lot. And so I completely understand not immediately bringing something like that up, or even if she doesn't end up bringing it up at all. Like I could see it being brought up, but if it's not, I think that also makes sense because despite knowing that these people are trying to do the right thing, that still could be a big problem. And it complicates it too with Father Ammon and the whole thing with like him having a falling out with the church over Sam, which Sam I was taking to be a transgender character. And so just that whole kind of thing too. It's like there were so many things that just weave a complicated web where you don't know how these people are going to react, basically. And so that's where it's even once you start realizing that all of the assumptions you had going in are not the case, they're still like, but these are real people, is how they feel. And so real people can still be unpredictable, even with the information we have. So.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see the expression that Stacy's made several times along the day here.
And Sam said his dad took in strays too, like Gregory. I'm thinking that maybe that will help John come around eventually to his stray.
Maybe. I hope so. I mean, I think that while you were talking about John being a third wheel at the beginning of this, I think that when they were all pushing is when they kind of all became a unit. And whether that stayed like that for the whole time or not, I do think that that it did do something to bring them closer together, because when they met Gregory and Sam, John could have easily said, "This is my wife," and then we just found this kid. But instead, he connects him to them automatically, like, nephew, this is our nephew. And I think instead of like immediately throwing him under the bus or calling him a stray or being like, I don't know, we found him somewhere, he brings him into the group just for that introduction. And so whether that stays like that or not, or whatever would happen, like, I don't know what's happening at the beginning of the next book, but I think if John is leaving immediately in the next book, he would make sure that he took Maria and Marcos with him, not just, I mean, because I feel like they're more of a team now than they were when he first woke up.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that particular aspect of them kind of becoming a group like that and the acceptance. So I just thought of, I keep racking my brain. Everybody talking about the terrible thing. I just thought of a really terrible theory, because now, and like, I almost don't want to say it in case something like this happens, but now I'm thinking, because we were talking so much about Maria's baby, what if the baby gets old enough and she miscarries and the baby has a nightmare and something bad happens? So now I'm just thinking along those lines. So, and I just say, obviously, I know I don't want you to, Daniel, even confirm if I'm on the right track. But I was like, now I'm wondering about that. Like, is that even possible? And have to see.
Well, they have to keep the baby away from stereos, which is the same, because they're keeping Maria away from all of that stuff. So.
Oh, I suppose that's a good point. I guess I don't know how the baby would.
It'll be fine. We're just gonna say it'll be fine. Don't put that out there in the world.
That's what I was thinking. Like, it seems terrible, but or maybe they'll just be like, I don't know. Maybe Maria's nightmare will end up being her own like baby coming out all messed up, and then like John will have to kill it or something. I don't know. I'm spiraling into worse and worse scenes that could happen.
I want to see what's gonna happen to John when he finds out, because right now, what shred of humanity that he's hanging on to in the midst of everything is his daughter. And so this is going to be a child of his. And so I don't know what it's going to do to him, but he has to have some kind of thoughts about it, and they can't all be bad. I mean, he's clearly willing to risk all of this to get to his child. So the fact that he's going to have another one, maybe. It's going to be fine. I'm not even worried about the baby.
I am very interested to see how John reacts, because that's another one of those things where I could see it going really either way. Like, I could see him being furious that she didn't tell him, upset at himself for letting it happen, feeling like he has to protect it like his own. I mean, like, there's so many different ways that would fit within John. I feel like it's going to be explosive one way or another when he finds out. And because I said that, maybe it'll be like he'll just quietly be like, "It is what it is. Let's go." And who knows? It's like, it's hard to know, but I am really interested to read that moment whenever it may come.
I know. I keep talking so much crap about John, but I do love him as a character because I can't decide how I feel about him. So I think that makes him even more interesting to me, and I just really like him, even though sometimes, like, I think Stacy said, I wish he would go back to sleep sometimes.
Well, honestly, that's the crazy thing about the series so far, is because with the first book, granted, we do get a decent amount of Maria backstory as well. And her stuff was really interesting and compelling as well. But like, at least for me, book one, it was John that pulled me in. So you pull me in with a short book, and it's John that pulls me in. And then you very quickly put him to sleep for a while, and then the whole next book, which is like the longest one so far, he's basically a non-factor, and like, he's still relevant, like there's still plot lines surrounding him, but it's just like, you take this character and do that, and somehow it worked. And not only did it work, but then like you already had the whole the driving through Death Valley part with Lullaby, where it's just Maria on her own, and then you have Sleepwalking, where it's Maria and Marcos, but it develops these other characters in such a great way in the shadow of John, and that's why Flashlighters did such a great job kind of bringing them back together and combining it like that. But yeah, it's just like normally I would have been mad. I'm like, really, you're gonna do this to the character that I was reading most interested in, and like it worked though. I'm like, okay, I'm okay with this because it worked.
Yeah,
Okay,
guys,
Brandy, I agree with you, but I also think that I don't know what's going to start out happening in the next book. Like, are they already going to be on their way? Because sometimes, like in the last one, we ended with John in the school, and then it started with them in the truck already on their way. So we might not even see what goes on with Gregory and all the rest of them. Like, we might just skip ahead and start. I don't know. I've already got it on my Kindle ready to go though.
I'm so excited for you guys to read City of Blood. I know there's been like some people, you know, feel like this book has less character development certainly than 3, and kind of feels like a setup book for the next one. Has been some of the feedback that I've received, or you know, the feedback that it's received rather. And like I certainly don't disagree with that in a lot of ways. I mean, I think that this is in similar, like books 2 and 3 are companion novels or companion volumes. They fit really well together, and the same applies to books 4 and 5. They're companions, so you know, it's not surprising to me that to hear some people, you know, speak on like the lack, like or what is felt as the lack of I mean, it's nice actually hearing you say, Nico, like that the talk about the character development in this book. Some people haven't felt that there's been quite as much in this one as there was in others. I would say with this one, like some of it's kind of disguised. I would say, like, I think on reflection, people might look back at the Flashlighters and be like, oh wow, there were some really quiet but significant character development moments that took place here. Again, and I'm going to point back at the road sequence. Like Amanda spoke about that one, but like some of the things become like kind of bigger in retrospect when you're looking at them in the rear view mirror, which kind of, I mean, which is fun too, you know. I mean, there's just you know, things just hit differently in different books for sure. You get different beats in different books, and I wasn't surprised. Like this is a very, like, there's a lot more action in this one. You know, it's bookended by 2 pretty big, like, significant action sequences. And it's a shorter book, whereas like Sleepwalking really is kind of like you know, it's a very full experience. Like Sleepwalking has a lot going on, and this one has a lot like of new stuff being introduced. But so you know, there isn't quite as much time for certain things to develop, but on the same hand, I think like a lot of stuff does develop. It just happens right below the surface. And
It was definitely, a lot of it was really subtle. I agree.
Okay, but like that, like you know, those are the kinds of things that, like, that's how it goes sometimes. Like in our lives, I feel like the moments that we that are significant, we don't always realize, like, hey, this is a significant moment while we're living it. And I think that kind of works the same way with the flash, like with the Flashlighters. I don't know. Maybe I should just stop talking. We could talk about this again later after you've read more. But yeah, I'll just stop myself because I want to, you know, let y'all experience, you know, some of these character movements in a natural way.
Okay, well, I just have one more thing. Oh, Stacy's got to go to work.
Yeah, Stacey has to go to work. Can't wait to talk about City of Blood with everyone next time. Have a Merry Christmas.
Nice.
Merry Christmas, Stacy.
I was looking back through my highlights in here to see what else I wanted to talk about. And John has a whole sequence where he remembers Matthew from the very beginning. And a long time ago when they left, I said, was Matthew dead? They just left him laying there. And now we've thought about Matthew again. And so I'm convinced Matthew was not dead. I have zero idea what that means. Like, because I thought at first Matthew's going to end up being like at the civilization when they get there. I haven't stopped thinking about him. And so I'm like, he's going to be there for the church thing. And then I was like, well, how would he do that? Because they went through the desert in such a weird way. And like, I don't know how he physically would be able to get in front of them and like be at the place they're going. But I think in the back of my head, I'm constantly thinking that he's going to be there somewhere. So anyway, that was the last thing that I had highlighted. Did anybody else think anything about Matthew, or are you just like, okay, John's just being weird?
Yeah,
I don't want to hear from Daniel because I don't want to know that I'm wrong, but I want.
See, now that you say it, I'm thinking about it too, because I do tend to latch on and overthink about some things. So I definitely can identify. I guess I didn't think too much about it. I kind of saw him as being dead in the first book when I read it, like that John didn't want to have to kill him, but that it's just kind of happened. So I didn't get that, but like I love the obsessing on small things because I tend to do that too. So I 100% identify with the feeling.
Okay.
Yeah, same. I didn't catch that one. Yeah, but now you have me wondering.
I'm going to be hunting out all the Matthew references from now on. I'm like, okay.
Cool. Well, this series is something else. Let me tell you. But
I know. I'm
Thank you.
so excited.
Yeah.
Very excited for City of Blood.
So, just a reminder for everyone that we're meeting in 3 weeks because of the holidays, and then after that, we'll have reading sprints for Lily right after or that night. So,
we'll talk, it's 3 weeks for City of Blood. We're meeting, and
it's on the 8th, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, January 8th.
And is that a Saturday again,
Mm-hmm.
or is it?
Yeah, it's a Saturday.
Okay. And then is it the following week? It's Friday that we're doing Lily.
I'm not sure about. We haven't picked a day for Lily yet because it's kind of thick. But,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, but we'll find a date. I'll let you know. We'll communicate about that. But I was trying to find a date after the holidays and stuff. So as of right now, but if things change, we'll figure it out. But yeah, we want to do reading sprints that night. So that Saturday night we'll have some. We'll not be midnight reading sprints. We'll do a little bit earlier than that.
Oh, that was rough.
Yeah, it was kind of tough. But yeah, we'll do some later night reading sprints, not
Sounds
midnight.
good.
So it'll be fun. We'll have a little party.
Cool.
Good time.
That'll be great.
It'll be a lot of fun. So thanks everyone Daniel. Thanks again for taking time when we know you're busy, have books to write and things to do. So thanks for taking time to chat with us. And Amanda and Nico, of course, thanks for reading with us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for all of this. This is a special thing to be able to do. So I appreciate it a lot. And yeah. And I see Lily behind you on your shelf there.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Yeah, we're having a blast reading this series. We're having a lot of fun.
100%.
Yeah. So thanks everybody. Thanks again for dropping by and interacting with us in the comments, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.